Brutale 1090RR, which is an absolute beast of a motorcycle. And to prove this, we put it up against 350 Lamborghinis, and we put this bike through its paces from Milan down to ft.lbs, which is on the eastern coast of Italy. Wow. Lamborghini Aventador, Lamborghini Gallardo, Diablos, Countach, none of those bikes were any trouble for the 1090RR, because this bike is called Brutale for a reason. Absolutely brutal motorcycle, having tons of torque available, pretty much any gear, any speed. I mean, you're doing 60 miles per hour, 70, 80, 90, 100, 120, and never once did I feel this bike was like, oh, okay, now the power is kind of simmered off. This bike just has tons of power everywhere, every time. Now, one of the first things I thought about this bike when I got on it for the first time, I straightened it up and I said, man, this bike is heavy. Because if you know me, I don't like bigger bikes. I generally like smaller bikes, 600 series bikes and stuff like that. I even ride on a 250cc bike. So I was not exactly encouraged by the weight of this bike when I first set it straight when I got it for the first time. However, that was it. That was the end of the weight concerns. Once I got on the bike and started riding it, all that disappeared. Somehow, the way the bike is balanced and the way the bike is set up, weight is not a concern. Very flickable bike, absolutely very flickable bike. Felt very much at home in the twisties. And you've got the Pirelli, these are Pirelli Super Corsa tires. They did the job. Now in the wet, they weren't the best, but they still did their job. I had the rear end step out a little bit a couple of times. No big deal, wasn't dramatic. They just maintained their traction, regained traction transitionally, smoothly, and got back on things. So very twisty, very flickable bike, very comfortable bike. If you look at the seat on it, it's got the nice leather seat, a lot of coverage on it. It's very soft. And again, we did a lot of mileage on this bike, man. We rode on this bike for 3 days straight from Milan, Bologna, Rome, all on this bike. And again, we did a lot of mileage on this bike, man. We rode on this bike for 3 days straight from Milan, Bologna, Rome, all on this bike, and had no problems with comfort at all. So this is a bike that's comfortable and turns a lot of heads. Everywhere we go, people are coming around. We actually had all the Lamborghinis parked up. I had 2 professional photographers when I came back to the bike. They were taking pictures of the bike. And this happens all the time. The other night in Bologna, we had like 4 or 5 guys crowding on the bike, and they're looking at it, checking out the suspension. Definitely a head turner. Very beautiful bike. It sounds great. I think this is a stock exhaust. You got twin pipes here, and it sounds very good with the stock exhaust. And I also like the sound when you roll off the throttle. It's just got this really raw, rough sound to it. Really like the sound of it. So looks great, sounds great, tons of power, and the power starts right away. You don't have to get high RPMs. Pretty much initially, once you start rolling on that throttle, it's a beast. Now, a couple things to mention. So, great bike, comfortable, good handling, very flickable, and sounds great, looks great, turns a lot of heads. Now let's get into the details on the bike. You got 8 traction control settings, all the way from 0 with no traction control, all the way to 8, which is gonna give you the maximum level of traction control in terms of in wet conditions, slippery conditions. So you have a lot of control to dial in the traction control exactly the way you want it to be. You also got 3 power modes on this. We were running this bike in sports mode, which is very aggressive. You're getting the full power available to you. But you also have a rain mode, which is appropriate for slippery type conditions. If you're not familiar with European bikes, just think about something like the Kawasaki Z1000, which we love that bike. That's a great bike, lots of torque. This is a similar setup here. You don't have the full front fairing, so it's a similar design, similar power delivery. However, that's when the similarities stop. This bike is a work of art, and that is one of the key things with MV Agusta. They try to make their motorcycles very beautiful, and I think they've done a great job. I'm not really a fan necessarily of the naked bikes, but the way they've done this, I mean, just look at all the angles and the curves on this thing, and then you got the LED day running lights here for safety. so it stands out a little bit more. Sometimes motorcycles can blend in with cars, so it's nice to have these, you know, this clearly, the combination of this light with these two lights. Clearly it's something different, it's going to stand out more, so it's a great safety feature. It's got hazard lights, which I like as well. That's a nice safety feature. You're broken down side of the road, you know, you've got the signal lights that are actually in the mirrors. So again, increased visibility, increased safety. This is a 1090RR. There's a 1090 standard, a 1090R, and this is a 1090RR. So you're gonna have increases in horsepower when you're going from the standard to the RR, and also increases in braking, for example. So a couple of changes in those models, and of course the prices change as well. Here you have 320 millimeter discs on this particular bike. I think on the standard bike it's only 310 millimeters, so you got bigger discs on here. You got 4-piston brakes, they're Brembo brakes. You also have ABS on this bike, which is a great, again, another great safety feature on the bike. In the rear, you've got a single side swing arm on the bike. Again, very beautiful, you know, and a great design. You also have the adjustable rear shock right here, top of the line. You also have the adjustable forks. You have adjustability on both sides. So you have separate, this is basically a separate function fork, similar to what you see on some of the Kawasaki's, where you're adjusting suspension settings, a different setting on each side as well. All in all, very happy with the bike. Beautiful bike, lots of power, very comfortable, very fast, and no Lamborghini is any problem for the MV Agusta. This is absolutely a beast, and roaming with the bulls is no big deal. So if you're looking for an incredibly beautiful bike that's powerful, has tons of torque, and is comfortable, you can even do long distances in it. You can be on twisty roads. Now, one thing in particular, it's not necessarily that hard to have a bike that's very powerful, and I'll stand over here. To have a bike that's very powerful, you can easily add horsepower and torque, but I think what's interesting here is that they've done it in a way where it's actually very manageable. Now, mind you, this is absolutely not a bike for a beginner, because the power on this bike is monstrous. I'm talking about improper holding of the throttle, you know, and you hit a bump and you just do a slide, you know, twist on the throttle, and you can get a really aggressive acceleration. So you really got to know what you're doing, be in the appropriate gear, and hold the throttle appropriately. So this is absolutely a very powerful bike, not for a beginner at all. But if you're a mid-level to advanced rider looking for a really powerful, really aggressive, very torquey bike that looks great, it's going to turn a lot of heads, comfortable, twisty, this is the bike for you. The MV Agusta 1090RR, the monster, the beast of Milan.